this is one of their mobile kitchens that they actually...
Is that even some, what I call habitual...
Beautiful Stop and Shop in the Wilton penalty, but it was actually a tax, and that it... That's what. What's the name of the show? Good evening and welcome once again to the Marty Heiser Show. I know what you're thinking. It's the NFL draft tonight. Let me tell you everything you need to know. There's a short 6-foot quarterback out of Oklahoma, and he went to the Cleveland Browns. Doesn't seem to have a drinking problem like Johnny Football, so it might work out. The Giants picked the running back, which means Eli Manning is good for another 2-3 years. We're going to try to keep him on the field and win another Super Bowl with him because they went for a running back, not a quarterback. And in the third pick, the New York Jets also picked a quarterback. It seems like he's not exactly a Joe Namath, but we'll hope for the best. That's all you need to know. From now on, it's just going to be offensive guards and stuff and people you don't really know. Just realize that Cleveland, once again, is chasing that rainbow of the ultimate quarterback, and it's probably not going to work out. Now, for the next hour, we have an incredible show. We have an incredible lineup of intelligent people, people that are in the seats of power here in the Nutmeg States. And at the end of the show, or the second half, we'll see how it works out, but Larry Ditkoff, a progressive-minded member of this state, will be handed the reins of this show, and he will take us on home, and he will bring us to real enlightenment, kind of like they're enjoying in, say, Venezuela or parts of the old Soviet Union. And so we look forward to that. You may want to record this because the pearls of wisdom will be sown before us Republican, not less clear-thinking people. So stay tuned. It's going to be a great show. But I want to, first of all, welcome the future Lieutenant Governor of the state of Connecticut, Senator Joe Markley. Thank you so much for coming in. And Patric, Hale, economist extraordinaire, man of the world. I won't ask you to sing opera because you take me up on it, but suffice it to say that he has a great voice as far as that goes. Thank you so much for coming in. Senator Markley, first up, the Republican convention is coming up. You're running for lieutenant governor. I think everyone and their brother at this point is running for governor. How do you see this all shake out? Can the Republicans make some headway in this otherwise dominated Democrat state?
Well, we have a great opportunity, like as good as it could be, which is not to say we can't fumble it. But, and we have a great field of candidates, in my opinion. Running for lieutenant governor, I've been going around to town committees. In fact, I was in Beacon Falls earlier this evening.
So nice this time of year.
It was very nice. I love them all. But I see these candidates for governor 4 nights a week. I'm out doing town committees, and I think we have an impressive field. One might argue that the field is too big, but I'm pretty confident that once it comes down to one person, which really won't happen until we have a primary in August, that the person we have is going to be a strong candidate. I like our candidates, and I like our message, and I like our odds this year. And I'm running for lieutenant governor, frankly, because I want us to win, and I feel that I can be a strength in the second spot on the ticket. I think the conservatives know that I'm solid on the issues that matter to them. I've never voted for a tax
solid on the
increase.
issue. You're like the patron saint of everyone conservative in this state.
Well,
there's only like 5 or 6 of us left, but everyone has pictures of you in the kitchen, much like JFK in the kitchen of Irish immigrants in the boroughs on the East Coast.
I grew up with that. It's interesting.
Then
That's
you know
right,
what
the
I'm
pictures
talking
of
about.
JFK. Well, I haven't seen my picture that often, but I think that I can bring them along, and I think I can organize them, and I think I can make them a strength for the ticket in November, because we got to win this time. The state cannot keep going in the direction it's going. I got back in politics to try to help change the direction, and instead I have had a ringside seat in the Senate at the destruction of the state. And frankly, I don't want to be there any longer. If I don't want to be there with Governor Bisowitz or Governor Ganim or whoever they're going to come up with, I want to be part of a winning team and part of an administration that takes us in a new direction.
Patric, as an economist and looking at the pension numbers and looking at our obligations, is the state too far gone? Can we revive this carcass?
Well, here's the real
And
issue.
tell the next lieutenant governor what we're going to need to do.
Well, I'm going to tell the people of Connecticut first, is that Connecticut is, after 2 terms of our wonderful governor, a state that replicates Venezuela. Its wealth has disappeared, it continues to disappear. The thing that bothers me the most, mostly because my mother worked for the state welfare department for over 25 years, is the employees for the state, those people who serve us as citizens of this state, are being robbed. They're being cheated by their pensions. Let me show you a couple of things. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Where am I going?
I'll hold this up. Go ahead.
What this says is that the per capita income of Connecticut is #1 in the United States, but the pension liability is only at 51.9%. So let's say 52%, be generous to our governor. That means if you work for the state, 50% of your pension obligation is not paid for because the state has frankly stolen the money for you to try balance a budget and do things which had nothing to do as far as that's concerned. Now this is another one.
So per capita, if you were born in Connecticut today, that someone would reach over into the crib and go, "Welcome to the Nutmeg State. You owe me $64,864."
No, that's the per capita income of the state. This
my bad.
graph shows it. So each of you out there owe our state workers $35,000 that the state hasn't paid.
All right, we cut that in half. Now I don't feel so bad.
Well,
So
go ahead.
Pension obligations.
That's just pension obligations.
That's not bonded.
The state.
That's
No.
not bonded debt.
Well, the bond's a little bit different because the interest rates are going up, so you're adding that to the obligation
top
of
of
the
it,
budget.
yes.
So if you want to be honest, and I understand you're a very honest person, the Connecticut Republicans must go out and tell the truth to the people
That's
of
right.
Connecticut. We're broke, and we're going to have to make sacrifices. We're going to have to make sacrifices from the government, straight up. And better to get it over with quickly, because down the road, it'll all start coming back. This state that used to be, and still is, the richest state in terms of per capita income is, can I say, going to hell in a handbasket?
I believe you can. It's
Okay,
public
well-
access. No one's paid. What are they going to do? Cut our salary?
To repeat a challenge which Donald Trump made during the 2016, as far as voting for him, I'm going to say for the people who are listening tonight, in terms of voting for Republicans, what the hell do you have to lose?
First of all, can we call security because someone snuck in here? I don't know. Is there security here?
Well, I like to do the intro for Joe Markley because
I see.
I always paint him as a better articulator of conservative values and rational thinking than Ronald Reagan and all the other politicians put together. How he ended up in the Nutmeg State, I don't know. But when you listen to Joe, you get straight talk, you get simple logic, and you get the truth. I think the guy should run for president. We could launch his campaign right here, right now.
That's good. But what do you think about these pension obligations? I mean, he's talking about pretty much tough medicine, talk straight to the people. It's going to, all I can promise you is blood, sweat, and tears. But in the end, what do you think
I think
the approach
people
is?
are ready for it.
Okay.
Because I think people realize what a bind we're in. And we have to sweat it out of our system to some extent. And I said that's what got me back in politics. I thought this state is going to pieces. And for the first time I ran, my motto was it's time to face facts. We have not faced facts, and the problem has only gotten worse because we haven't. That's the terrible thing about it. And it is much like breaking any other addiction, which is you go through a period of pain and then you come out of it. But if you say, gee, if I just have one more drink right now, I'll feel better. Well, you'll feel better, but it won't solve your problem. And I think people are ready for a Republican that says that. But getting way back to what Dave said, we need somebody that can communicate what's going on. So I think we need a governor that not only has a vision of what has to be done and the determination to follow through, but the ability to go on TV and go before the people and say, look, this is what I'm doing. It's going to hurt, but stick with me and we'll get the job done. And I hope that such a character emerges from this
it's
process.
not too late to announce right here on the show.
Yeah. I am running for lieutenant governor. That's my announcement. I think I practically announced it on the show, as a matter of fact.
Well, the story too is in Connecticut, you don't run necessarily as a team during this primary sorting out season. That said, do you have a dog in the fight? Do you have one that you've been texting and keeping in touch with?
Honestly, no. And I feel like I can't. I need to be willing. I need to be ready to run with whoever the party nominates. And I feel confident that all the candidates that are in there are people that I can run with. They're saying the right things. They seem like the right kind of people. You never know until they're in the job. But I'm comfortable with them. I know most of them well, and I know all of them to some extent. But I will leave that to the Republican Party to sort out.
So at least they're better than 4 more years of the same.
Well, anything's better. I'll take anything over Dan Malloy.
That's the point.
But nothing is going to be solved by Bicewicz, Lamont, Ganem, etc.
I mean, the Ganem thing just I can't. I mean, I've actually met him a couple times. Seems like a decent guy. John Shaban famously helped coach his kid in football,
I didn't
youth
know that,
football. Yeah, so they have they bonded over some youth football sidelines. But my gosh, I mean, he's a convicted felon, and Bridgeport. Had him become the mayor, but is the state of Connecticut really going to get their head around
Democrats
having
call
that?
it an ideal candidate, don't they?
Ideal
It would be great
candidate.
in Washington, D.C., right? Marion Barry, bring him on.
I don't know. I mean, but
I don't think he's going anywhere. But who knows? The thing I'd say about it is, isn't fixing Bridgeport a big enough job? I mean, do you really have to? If you think you have the skills to do something, stay there and fix that. I felt the same way about Luke Bronin, who was running for governor and dropped out. It's like you got plenty of work left in Hartford.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of work, a couple hot items: tolls.
Yeah.
The Hartford bailout. There was one. I forget who was on the show. He talked about like a drowning state. We're drowning in our own debt, and then we just took on Hartford's debt. Like, oh, we got this. Don't worry about it. Like some rich uncle is going to help pay off some college debt or something. Like it's like throwing an anvil to a drowning person.
That's exactly
something
right.
like that. But what are your thoughts? Give us quickly on tolls on the Hartford bailout.
Let me jump in on the toll piece real quick. Didn't we have a little debate with the people running for Treasury here?
Yeah.
Well, and what was the British guy's name from in Uber Rich Greenwich? John, was it John something or other?
John something.
Yeah, okay.
Great accent.
So let me just frame this up. So he was
Sabian
sitting
Farm
right there,
in Round Hill Road.
He sees me come and sit down next to me. I don't know who this guy is. And I said, okay, can we start this discussion with a pledge for no tolls? And he says, with British accent, he had a great speaking voice. He says, well, I can tell you, we definitely do need those tolls. I came unglued. I was done with them. It's like, dude, we don't have a problem where we're not getting enough revenue. We've got a spending problem. You're addicted. So
That's right.
I mean, could you pledge to the crew
my
here?
goodness.
No new tolls.
No,
Hey,
no.
I have said every time I've run, I will not vote to raise your taxes. I remember I ran in 2010 and my opponent said, you can't promise that. I said, I can't. There's 2 buttons in front of me. It's me. I push it with my finger. I'm not going to vote to raise taxes. I don't care what happens. It makes your life easier. Something, people leave you alone. At a certain point, they say, we're not going to get Markley, so I don't get my arm twisted. Tolls is the same thing. Tolls is a terrible idea. I almost want to say I have a video. Go to YouTube and search Joe Markley tolls, and you'll get my 6-minute screed of why we don't need tolls. We're getting over $200 million from the federal government because we took the tolls down. The only way that we
Give that one more time, because you mentioned this before.
Yeah.
By the fact that we took the tolls down, because I can remember when we used to have tolls on the Merritt Parkway
That's
there, right at the Portchester Greenwich border, right there. But they took them down. They got rid of the booths and everything.
Yeah.
We got money for that. Like we got reimbursed. How does that work?
Well, we get about $210 million a year out of flexible highway funding. That's part of the gas tax that comes back to us because we took the tolls down.
Federal money.
Federal money.
Okay,
Free
good.
money. We can do anything we want.
Heaven knows we send enough to
Transportation,
Washington.
that's right. Any transportation project we want to do, including just fixing the roads or whatever. We also get, what people don't realize, we get about $50 million a year from interstate truckers that keep track, that have a mileage log and have to pay a reimbursement to the state. So we're getting over $250 million free of charge. If we put the tolls on and we lose that, the first $250 million we collect just brings us back up to zero. They want to put 121 gantries to read transponders when you get on and off the highway. And they'll tax us every mile we drive on the highway. And it won't be just 95 and 15, it'll be 84, 91, and it will be 9 and 8 and 72, and any number you think of that has a limited access highway, they're going to put a toll on. And they're not talking about 4 cents a mile is the national average. That's what they charge in Massachusetts, for instance. They're talking about as high as 20 cents a mile. If you're in Southington, I'm in Southington, my commute to the capital is 19 miles. If I did that 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, I'd be paying about $2,000 a year in tolls. That's new money that I'd have to pay out of nowhere. And it's just, and what they're also talking about congestion tolling, which says, oh, by the way, if you drive between 7 and 9 in the morning or between 4 and 6 in the afternoon, we're going to charge you 40% more than that. And you'd say, well, that's okay, because I'll tell my boss, listen, don't worry, I'll be coming in at 10:30 from now on. And he'll say, no, don't worry, you don't have to come in at all. I mean, people can't control that. All this is being done because they think, let's get the out-of-staters. The DOT says, even on our interstate highways, we never have more than 25% of the traffic that's out-of-state traffic. So we're going to pay, 75% of us are going to be paying to get 25% out of some out-of-stater. It's just ridiculous. And people have this vision, oh, we'll put them on the borders.
Yeah.
We'll do it somehow so I don't have to pay. Believe me, if we put the tolls in, you'll say, I'm sorry, I take it back, I don't want the tolls.
Yeah.
Bad idea. It won't happen. I don't think it's going to happen.
You don't
this
think it
session.
will?
And then we get a Republican governor, it won't happen.
From
Yeah.
your lips to God's
You're
ears.
also listening to the guy that saved Tennessee from a debacle.
Oh, you remember that.
Oh, Joe, when you speak, I never forget. Let me tell you. And when I read a report today that said Tennessee is one of the top 5 states getting people a net gain on population.
Yeah.
And it's all thanks to Joe.
They can't build roads
so
fast enough.
let me along this whole tax line, I've talked before with you, Marty, and on the show, I think Trump's an absolute genius. The guy is thinking, we talked about the whole 3D chess, he creates this chaos and then wins in the end. People don't realize the full impact of that tax bill that he passed. In that tax bill, the net effect to New York alone, just New York, is $72 billion a year in lost deductions. $72 billion a year.
Yeah.
They can't make that up. And I never really thought about it before that tax plan went in. The fact that all
Is
this.
that primarily because they can't deduct the state and local
Yes.
taxes?
Right.
They capped it at
Yes.
10,000.
Yes.
Okay.
The net effect, in my opinion, of this Connecticut thinking and what happened with the Trump tax cuts, it's going to rip the country just like that. And you've started a death spiral in all these blue states. Illinois can't get out of this hole. Connecticut can't, well, in all due respect, I think it's going to be a real struggle with the mentality to get out of the hole. New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, they're done. Spiral. New Jersey, over. They can't make up that kind of lost revenue. You can put a casino on every corner and you'll never make it up.
Well, that I'd say we were kind of talking about this before the show, but I do feel that Massachusetts is an example of a state with a very similar situation and similar problems. And just by moving a little bit in the right direction, they have had a substantial recovery. And that's my hope for Connecticut. I can't promise it. We are in a bad situation here. But I feel that sometimes if business thought we were getting things stabilized fiscally, if we could get out of some of the horrible binds we've put ourselves in, the CBAC agreement that the governor just made that runs till 2027, or the bailout that we extended to Hartford, and renegotiate these pension obligations so that businesses could look at us and say it's not going to get any worse. I think that things could come around. We still have the advantages as a state that we've always had. We're at a very good spot. It's a good piece of real estate in the United States.
Yeah, location.
Good. Education is excellent. I don't think, as far as colleges and universities, there can't be a political subdivision in the world that has a better concentration of colleges and universities
Yale,
than we do.
UConn,
Yeah.
Quinnipiac,
Wesleyan, Trinity. I mean,
Ridgefield
really,
High School. All the big ones are right here in our state. Shout out.
We might be pleasantly surprised. I say sometimes it's like you go away for vacation and you come back and there's a dried up plant and you think it's dead, throw a little water on it, and sometimes it has more life in it than you think. I hope that's true of our state if we could just move in the right direction.
Well, it's 100% true of Michigan.
Yeah.
Michigan is turning around big time.
Yeah.
But so we talked about where people are moving to and moving from. Here's the quiz question. You all can play along. Number one state people are moving out of?
Hold on. It's
California.
Illinois.
Yeah, I would-
Oh, California.
You should get one of your rescue calls and just
Yeah.
count on him. He's the numbers guy.
I know.
Well, so Joe's got
All I know is
number one out,
like
California.
U-Haul trailers, you can't get them to leave in California. You can get them for free to take them back. to
Well,
California.
dude, I don't know why I even
That- no,
prepared.
that's
You
a
guys
real-
have
that's
stole
a-
my thunder.
that's a real thing.
'Cause
Oh, my bad.
California is the number one state people are leaving, and Texas is the number one state they're going to.
Okay.
The cost of a one-way rental from California to Texas is twice as much. Literally, it's $2,600, and the rental from Texas back to California is $1,200.
Wow.
So there you go.
Great minds think alike.
I'm going to round out the top 5 of places people are moving to. All right, we said Texas is number 1. Florida, South Carolina, thanks to Joe, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Colorado. Where are they fleeing? New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Illinois.
High tax to low tax.
That's
wow.
right. That's right. And it's
Who would have thought that idea worked?
bad economy to thriving economy, which goes with it.
Okay, Patrick, we got one. We're going to hell in a handbasket. It's all over. Last one to leave Connecticut, turn out the lights. We got another one going. There's a glimmer of hope. A dried out house plant. Put some water on it. It's going to be okay. You, sir,
You're
the intelligence. You speak 5 languages. You can sing opera. You're a man of the world. You've been to the Sorbonne and wherever else you've been. What's going to happen?
Something like that.
Sorbonne. Right, Sorbonne.
What's going to happen to what?
What's going to happen to Connecticut? Is it as bad as they say? Is there
here's
hope?
the thing about the tax bill that virtually nobody's talked about because the mainstream media only listens to the Democrat propaganda, which is nonsense. The biggest thing in that tax bill was 100% writing off capital costs in the first year. And you're talking about Connecticut. How do you stimulate Connecticut? That's the first thing you do. You sit down with the leaders of the industry in Connecticut and say, how do we refocus this economy and take advantage of that kind of situation? The other thing that's happened because of the tax bill, which is even bigger, well, not even bigger, but also equally bigger that nobody ever talks about, is that all of the blue states, particularly Connecticut and New York and California, the biggest contribution to their public employee pension funds has come from the Trump stock market, where they now have a 13.7% return, whereas in the last 3 years of Obama's administration, CalPERS, the largest pension fund in the United States, had 1.5% return, 0.6%, and 1.1%.
Wow.
In 2017, it was up 13.7%. Part of that is also the repatriation issue from overseas is allowing companies who had profits overseas to actually fund their unfunded liability on the corporate side. They went from an 81% unfunded percentage to now to 87%. There have been $32 billion of corporate pension funds being added back from this repatriation.
What was the total amount that came back? 350 billion?
No, that was
Just Apple. That was just Apple.
It was
Wow.
250 billion came back, but they also pledged an extra 100 billion to actually increase their investments in the United States.
Wow.
And the whole point about Connecticut is it has to understand that you can go overseas, you can export our expertise by going over and bringing these companies who pledged to Trump that they're going to invest in the United States to Connecticut. And nobody seems to know what they're doing in Hartford when it comes to the rest of the world. Nobody.
Caller, what do you think? Is there hope for Connecticut? And do you have a question for State Senator Joe Markley, our next Lieutenant Governor?
Your good old friend David Stevenson, Marty, and thank you very much for joining me on the last 2 weeks to talk about tribalism.
Okay, you got to talk a little bit louder.
Okay, thank you for joining me the last couple weeks on Progressive Soup to discuss tribalism.
Yes, great.
Now, three questions for your guests. If you want to compare apples to apples, I think it's probably fair. Let's compare the stock market in Trump's first year in office to the stock market in Obama's first year in office, And let's get those facts on the table. Secondly, with migration from high tax states to low tax states, that's also a migration from good education states.
Okay, you're breaking. I think I got that. I think what he was saying was compare Trump's first year with the stock market increase to Obama's first year with the stock market increase, and then compare the migration from states with poor education to states with good education. Any numbers on that?
Well,
You're the numbers
I'll
guy.
start the first one because it's really easy. The fourth quarter of 2008 is when the stock market hit the bottom, December of 2008. Obama was inaugurated in 2009 in January. If you're at the bottom, there's nowhere else to go but up. If you'll recall, he borrowed $10 trillion and doubled our national debt. Well, and that's over 8 years. Here's the gross numbers on that. Our GDP in the United States went from $14.5 trillion to $18.5 trillion under Obama. That's $4 trillion. He borrowed $10 trillion to increase the country by $4 trillion. You know, you don't have to be a genius to figure out how to do that. Secondly, that had
Kind of
already
like
been
how do you make $1
spent.
million in real estate? First,
Yeah.
borrow $2 million.
Yeah, exactly. But when you get to where we are now with Trump, the stock markets, as I told you, the last 3 years, it was sliding, and the fact is, that actually was the biggest cause for the unfunded liability for state pension funds. Trump's
We got
increase-
to launch his political campaign here in the next 5 minutes. by the
Go
way.
ahead, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. No.
Well, essentially, Trump basically said, let's lower the taxes, let's go out and basically compete and kick some butt. And that's why we have the stock market going crazy. Because, you know, Americans can do anything. We went to the moon. Nobody else has gone to the moon. All you need is in the White House is actually a good cheerleader to say, let's go and do it.
Yeah.
And
Let's get Joe on board here. He traveled all the way from Hartford, man. He's going to save the state.
Go ahead, Joe.
He was doing fine
I
there.
know, I
for
agree.
me. Yeah.
No.
I think that one thing that worries me is that Connecticut has failed to come back during a time of recovery. And I hope that things keep going forward long enough in America for us to get on that upswing.
And incidentally, if I can add here,
Yeah.
that is the point.
Yeah.
We had recovery for 8 years, except in Connecticut, where we went down.
Well, there's a Seinfeld episode where George Costanza realizes that if he just did the opposite of what he wants to do, and I say if Dan Moy had done the opposite of what he wanted to do, he would have been the best governor in the history of the state. Everything he did was wrong, in my opinion, and the tax increases have been devastating. And of course, they've only driven us further into a deficit because they've depressed economic activity, and this is so clear. But it's not clear to the Democrats. They can never admit it. They will never learn because they believe in a different doctrine. They believe we have not given enough of this medicine of tax increases.
Well, they just believe the state can solve the problems. The state is the problem.
And that's what the
I love
Republicans
your
are-
analogy of bleeding. Like,
You remember
yeah,
that
Go
too.
ahead, go ahead.
But we have to make this into an election where we say, do you think we need more government or less government? Higher taxes or lower taxes? More regulation or less regulation? Because if we define it that way, the people are overwhelmingly on our side, and we just have to have the nerve to come out and say it.
Yeah, I know. I think you're right. Now, let me ask you just some raw political questions
Yes.
in our waning moments.
Yes.
But how do we avoid the circular firing squad that is the Republican Party in Connecticut?
Okay.
Because this is what's going to happen. I've been through a couple of these cycles. I'm with Tim Herbst. I'm with
I'll say something
John.
nobody else is going to say to you.
Go ahead. I'm
We're
all
going to
ears.
have a very crowded primary. 6, 7, 8 people in the primary. The advantage of that is it's not in anyone's interest to shoot at anyone else. Because if I shoot at you, it helps him more than it helps me. So I think what everyone's going to do is spend all their time saying, rah, rah, Tim Herbst, and find his voters. Rah, rah, Mark Boughton, and find his voters
Yeah.
and turn them out on election day. There should not be any reason for bitterness. It's where the best man or woman win, and you hope that that's what happens, that this process brings out the strongest campaigner, and without anybody having taken a shot at anybody else. I'm hopeful.
Okay, so you're going to leave it up to the people then. This isn't going to be a back room deciding at the convention who's in, who's out, and then everyone, you know, takes their turn.
The convention's going to put 3 or 4 people into the primary. Petitions are going to put 2 or 3 people into the primary.
So it's going to be a 5, 6
It's going to be
person.
5 people anyways.
Okay, what about the lieutenant governor's race? Are you just
There's-
going to win it outright because people are going to recognize your genius, your
After the show,
your physical?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I will do. I feel very good about my chances in the convention. Whether anybody wants to primary or not is going to be up to them.
Hold on, caller. Are you a registered voter in Connecticut?
Yeah, in fact, I actually threw a couple of votes away for you over the years.
Are you going to vote for Senator Joe Markley because you appreciate his positive view of public policy?
Well, he wears a brown jacket nicely, but no way. I mean, his voting record's atrocious. I mean, all I keep hearing is the same stuff. 8 years.
Okay, is it true that you've written for the New York Times from time to time? Is that true?
And the Richfield Press.
There you go. So what's your question for the candidate, State Senator Joe Markley?
Well, let me ask you. I actually have a comment and a question. Why did he keep blaming the last 8 years of inaction economically on Malloy, where before that we had a governor that went to the joint and he got arrested the second time. We had Jody Rell that did nothing. And what you're basically running for, lieutenant governor, is pretty much a ceremonial position. You really don't have much to do. I'd like to know who you support in the gubernatorial race. If you actually have the balls on air right now in the last week of April to come out for a candidate. Thank you.
All right, thanks for your score. What about that, Jody Rell?
The first part of the question. I love the first part of the question. Why do you blame the last 8 years on Malloy? Right? When Rell was governor before that, I blame the last 8 years on Malloy because he was governor for 8 years. I can blame Rell and Rowland for what they did. I don't think Rowland was a disappointment to me. Rell is a wonderful woman that did not really have the fight in her necessarily to take on a overwhelmingly Democratic General Assembly. Mm-hmm. But the last 8 years is all Dan Malloy. And whatever decline was going on before Malloy has just accelerated under his lousy, crappy leadership. As far as who I support for governor, because I have to be prepared to run for whoever the Republican Party picks, I'm not going to get into that fight. I could talk about them all. I could say nice things about them all. I could say critical things about them all. But I know this: I will support any one of them enthusiastically over anybody that's running on the Democratic side.
All right, let's take the top 4. Say something in lickety-split positive. Mark Boughton.
Mark Boughton, tremendous experience, knows every aspect of the political world, executive and legislative experience both. I think has a good plan for the state, makes a good connection with people.
Dave Walker.
Dave Walker, tough. Again, tremendous experience of a very different sort.
Comptroller of the United States.
Comptroller of the United States, knows how to deal with large financial figures of the sort we got before us.
Steve Sitnick.
Steve Sitnick I like very well, very bright man, comes across strong. I don't know his vision quite as well as some of the others, but I like Steve thoroughly.
Last one, Steve Herbst.
Tim Herbst.
I'm sorry, my bad. Tim Herbst.
The toughest of the bunch of them, tremendous political skills, great speaker, great debater, also has run a city successfully. I think he's got the nerve for the job.
Yeah, he's a bit of a disruptor, a bit of a bull in the china shop, and I kind of like that at some level.
But I like them all. Those are 4 men I like thoroughly.
Okay, last question. Did you fire any questions for State Senator?
No, I'm going to turn my speaking time over to Joe, and my vote is anything Joe runs for, I'm voting for him.
Well,
just
thank
so
you
you know.
very much. I appreciate
Wow,
that.
he might be one of the guys with the portrait, like JFK in his kitchen, you know, over grandma giving you porridge, and you say...
Let's just say if his bust was in the Oval Office, I wouldn't ship it back over to Great
my
Britain.
goodness.
Okay.
And you're actually a delegate.
Absolutely. You got my vote.
Tremendous.
I'll be there. What's it going to be? Foxwood Casinos or?
I don't even remember
it's
which
one
one
of those
it is.
casinos.
I'll check that
I got
morning.
a room. I got the VIP badge. It's going to be a party. It's going to be
Great.
good. I got a weird kind of. It's a weird sort of thing because I think it's so hopeless, and I just don't know how this is all going to work out. But I had that same feeling before Trump got elected. I was like, I don't know. It's going to be Hillary. I just know it's going to. And then. It happened.
That's right.
And I think
The sky's cleared.
The sky's clear.
The
Trump's
clouds
the
opened, the
president. I
sun
couldn't
came
believe
through.
it. And I had the same kind of vibe with Connecticut. I'm like, yeah, everyone's a Democrat. Everyone's all, you got a bunch of ladies wearing funny hats going down to Washington. No one's going to vote. It's going to be, but I'm like, people can't follow this. They just can't follow this more, down this Democratic path. So I've got this weird vibe that I think it's going to work. Last comment.
What do you got to lose?
Yeah.
What do you got to lose? Vote Republican.
All right.
4 more years, you're going nowhere.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for
Hey,
coming in. I really
a pleasure
appreciate
to
it.
see you again.
I will see you at the
to meet you.
convention, and you definitely got my vote.
Always the best.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is a historic night. I know you thought, there's not a lot going on, but we are going to try a cultural, yea, political, yea, philosophical change here that could only be done on the Marty Heiser Show because we are fair and balanced. We don't want to try to couch things. We don't want to try to force any ideology down your throat. We welcome progressive voices. And more than that, as of right now, I am turning over this show to the progressive extraordinaire, Larry Ditkoff, who will be the host, the maitre d', the sergeant of arms for the remainder of this program. Larry, it is my honor to have you have here, just sit right here. I'll take care of the microphone and everything. I am your servant, and thank you so much for agreeing to lead the remainder of the show. Let me get my, stuff out of your way and take it away.
Thank you, Marty, and it's really great to be back here on the Marty Heiser Show. And Marty, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to host.
I thought this is a wonderful idea.
To host the show. And again, I just want to make something perfectly clear to our vast viewing audience. It really is not about ideology. It's about the format of the show. I had some requirements to become host. One would be that it was going to be an issue-oriented discussion show. There would be no videos. Dave, we are not going to have you read individual news articles over an extended period
no
of time.
facts, right?
No, Dave.
Just all how we feel today.
No, Dave. The point being, we have specific issues that we're going to discuss on a grand scale, as opposed to taking arbitrary or anecdotal events that occur that don't necessarily prove anything, but just are biased towards one particular point of view. It's going to be a discussion of issues, and I say let's make the Marty Heiser Show great again. And as the great John McLaughlin, the late great John McLaughlin used to say, issue one. I have an issue with last week's show. Last week's show, for those of you who watched, I called in and Marty had made reference to James Comey and the president's tweet in terms of locking James Comey up. And I called up and said that, you're talking about a private individual. The president personally calling for the arrest of another individual. And the panel, it was Dave, it was Al Alper, another individual who I didn't know, made reference to James Risen. For those of you who don't recall, James Risen was was a reporter for both the Washington Post and New York Times, who had a source within the State Department about leaking, and first George Bush and later Barack Obama subpoenaed him to give up his, sources, to give up his information. But as far as I could tell, the president himself didn't call for his arrest. It was the Justice Department that decided to investigate him. Question, does anyone see a difference between a president calling for the arrest of an individual as opposed to, and also an individual who is going to run an investigation that might lead back to him personally, as opposed to the Justice Department, and I don't recall Barack Obama specifically saying let's arrest Risen. The Justice Department leading an investigation into an individual for leaking information about the State Department. Dave, Patrick, please.
I'll take it. I don't
Okay.
recall ever the FBI and Mueller treating an individual, particularly the private lawyer of the President of the United States, and acting like a Gestapo in the middle of the night and breaking into his house, his hotel room. I lived in Berlin for 3 years as a student. I never expected to see that back here in the United States. I'm disgusted by it. How many people would like to actually be in a case where there's an investigation by the FBI and your lawyer has been broken into, and all of his details, all the things you said to the lawyer is now in their hands. What kind of justice were you going to get?
It's funny you mentioned about being a lawyer. The president was on Fox and Friends today for half an hour, and he specifically said that Michael Cohen did a minuscule fraction of his overall legal work.
Well, he's worth $5 billion.
That he really wasn't his lawyer.
Look, I come from Greenwich. I know quite a lot of billionaires and centimillionaires. They have corporate lawyers, they have development lawyers, and then they have fixers. Every single one of them.
Okay, but this, you have to remember, this is Trump's own Justice Department. This was Rod Rosenstein.
Excuse me.
Rod Rosenstein agreed.
Is this Justice Department following orders from Trump? I haven't seen that.
Trump. Okay.
Tell me what Trump has ordered the Justice Department to do. Did Trump order the Justice Department to break into his own
No,
lawyer?
because it's bad for him. What Trump did order, I don't want to say order, what Trump said.
Would you like to live
Hold on. What Trump said, we got to lock Comey up. You said that, you put that out in a tweet. There's no question.
Look, we now know what Strzok, what Orr, what Page, and what McCabe have been doing, and here is Comey, who's the head of the FBI, and didn't even know what was going on his own floor. And then he goes and decides, after doing a memo, after a private one-to-one conversation with the President of the United States, which by definition is confidential, and leaking it to the press. That's illegal.
A couple of things. One, it would only be illegal if it's classified.
It was classified. He didn't put classified on the paper.
Go ahead, Dave.
Let's roll around here. So you posed the question, do we think it is inappropriate for a president to call for the arrest of someone like that?
One, should the president be calling for the arrest of an individual? Yes. And two, the individual who he called for his arrest was leading an investigation that could lead back to the president. That's how we do it in dictatorships.
Let me turn it around. Do you have any issue with Maxine Waters and all these politicians clamoring for the impeachment? It was essentially an arrest. The impeachment of the president over what?
It's not an arrest at all. You don't lose your freedom. You just
lose your job.
No, Dave. You're put on trial for your job. And then it's up to the Senate.
So you don't have an issue with clamoring for an impeachment of the president
with no evidence.
With no evidence. That doesn't bother you. You don't have.
Did I say I was for impeachment? Did I mention that?
What you're saying is you're accusing Trump of using his position to clamor for someone to be tried and arrested for actual crimes, right? Leaking confidential information.
Then you know what? Then let's lock up Condi Rice. Then let's lock up Condi Rice because she did. You want to lock up Condi Rice because she put down in her book things that she mentioned in one-on-one conversations with Bush?
Amen.
Can I take this?
Yes, please, Marty.
First of all, it's James Rosen, not James Risen.
I think it's James
Risen.
It's Rosen.
There's a Rosen and a Risen. There
was two different.
They're two different guys.
Okay, well, James Rosen's one I'm talking about, and it was Eric Holder, the Attorney General, that signed off on basically wiretapping his phones. And they said he was some sort of a terrorist threat. And for good measure, they also wiretapped the phones of his mother and father out on Staten Island.
Eric Holder, the Attorney General, not the President.
Well, you're just talking about the Justice Department.
No, I'm talking about the President calling for the arrest of an individual. Calling for the arrest of an individual.
I understand.
Did he arrest him?
Listen, I understand. Barack Obama.
Did he arrest him?
The President doesn't have the power to arrest.
Well, thank you. So what difference does it make? It's his opinion.
Because in the United States of America, the presidents don't just call out for the arrest of political enemies. That's not how we do it here,
First
Marty.
of all, I don't think he called for the arrest.
Nothing happened.
He most certainly did. He said lock him up.
I'm in the middle of a sentence, so let me
Go ahead,
finish,
Marty.
and then you can tell me where I'm wrong. I don't think he called for his arrest. I think he called him a slime ball, as I recall. And I couldn't agree more, because I think that James Comey is not just a dirty cop, I think he's a filthy cop. And I'll tell you why. Because he took opposition research that was paid for. $6 million, that's a lot. For a piece of paper to write down something along the line of, Dave Streit is a rotten guy, Patric Hale beats his wife. And he got paid $6 million for that. And he took this document and he went into the Oval Office to the president-elect, maybe he goes in the Oval Office, and he neglected to tell him that that was opposition research that was paid for by his political candidate. You said about 3 or 4 times.
Okay, let's see what the caller has to say.
I'll hold it up here.
Yeah.
Caller, what do you got?
First of all, it's great to see Larry, the liberal, back on the show.
My pleasure to be here.
Big
Back on, he's running it.
for the show. Hey, Larry, here's I guess part of the question, and I got a couple, and I'm sorry I joined the show late, and I'm dead serious.
Please.
You're terrific.
Thank you.
Larry, here's the question, right? Okay, the Justice Department right now is not taking orders from anybody, okay? I don't necessarily believe in the deep state, but you got to tell me this. There's a witch hunt on for Trump, and if anybody denies that, they're fools, right? Number one. Number two, how is it that they're going after a non-disclosure that Stormy Daniels signed that she now wants to capitalize on, yet nobody in your party is talking about the $835,000 that Clinton paid Paula Jones? Explain that to me, okay? Explain that. Somebody, please.
It's a good point.
Okay.
Can I take a crack at it? Bill Clinton isn't the president right now.
Yeah.
That's old news. So, you know, that is.
But there is a double standard. There's this outrage.
There's always been a double
right,
standard.
there's this outrage about somehow or other Trump did something before he was president and all these allegations. And yet you had Clinton. I mean, his list of sexual harassments and assaults on women over there, $850,000, and Democrats are like, hey, but he's on our side, no big deal.
You see, Dave, one of the things, and I think I've said it on the show, and if I haven't said it on the show, let me say it now. I accept that people look past sins of individuals to promote people who support their ideology. The Democrats do it, and the Republicans do it. So, with Paul, I mean, I'm not defending Clinton with Clinton with Paula Jones. To my knowledge, Clinton didn't say we have to arrest Paula Jones. My main issue is the president calling for the arrest of someone who is leading to an who could have led an investigation which led back to him.
But wait a
That's my
minute,
issue.
Comey's out of office.
And Comey was already out of office. That's right.
So what difference if he's having an opinion saying somebody should arrest him? It's a big deal. So nobody's acting on it. So why are you upset about it? I don't understand that.
Because I'll say it again. Because a president who uses his office to call for the arrest of someone
He's not
who's
using his office.
He is using his office.
He's
putting out
voicing
a
an
tweet.
opinion. Did the
No.
Justice Department act on his opinion?
He said lock him up.
And is he locked up?
No, but
So
that,
it didn't make a difference.
He's calling attention to
I
his problem.
don't-
One more question for a caller here. Caller, go
and
ahead.
I want to get away. I have other things I want to talk about. So.
Hey, Larry, this is again an objective question.
Please.
Let's say Trump gets, and I know you didn't say this, or at least I didn't hear you say Kim beats Trump, but let's say Trump is out.
Right.
And we got midterm elections coming up, and everybody's nervous about what's going to happen. Who's the leader? Who's going to save America? Who is it? Is it Schumer? Is it Pelosi?
Well, it would be Mike Pence.
Right? And Larry, I'm the first guy that said Paul Ryan needed to go. Mitch McConnell needed to go, because when they said they weren't going to work with the other side, that's not what we elected them for. So I think those two, Schumer and Pelosi, need to go. But Larry, I'd love to hear who you think is going to save the country. Who's the next great leader? Thanks a lot.
Who's the next great leader?
That's a good point.
Elizabeth Warren.
No, I wouldn't say Elizabeth Warren. Maybe a guy like Cory Booker, who I think has a lot of character, who's I
He
think
used
a
to
pretty.
until he became part of Schumer's gaggle.
Yeah, well, he went into a house, saved someone's life.
No, I mean,
I think he's got. I think
I was
he's
a
got.
big fan, and suddenly he's become...
I think he's got a lot of character. Well, to a certain extent, that's politics. You mentioned
So
Paul Ryan.
your
mentioned
top
Paul Ryan. You
candidate's
mentioned
Cory
Paul Ryan.
Booker.
You mentioned. I'm just taking him out as
Okay.
an example. You mentioned politics. One of the things that, you mentioned Paul Ryan. He was a failed speaker. He could not marshal his troops to get the Affordable Care Act overturned. He couldn't get the only thing they really accomplished under
He
his
got the
tenure,
mandate taken out.
he
He got
was the
Gorsuch
tax bill.
passed.
I am. And I want to turn to another issue, because that was just one.
A pivot.
There was a pivot, okay? In the New York Times today, under an article in the business section, Ford to drop sedans in U.S. as part of turnaround bid. I'll just read very, very briefly. On Wednesday, the automaker said it was accelerating efforts to slash costs and planned to stop making the Focus, the Fusion, and other sedans for the North American market in a bid to turn around its fortunes. Then it quotes a guy, Mr. Shanks, he's a CFO. Mr. Shanks said North American operations have been hurt by rising costs for key commodities such as steel and aluminum. When the president announced his tariffs on steel and aluminum, I don't know if I said it on this show, I was very much against it for precisely this kind of thing. That yes, it helps steel and aluminum producers, but it kills people who are users of steel and aluminum. Precision Cast Parts, which is a huge steel user, announced layoffs after the increase in prices coming from the tariffs. Farmers who have been hurt with the tit-for-tat coming from China because they've raised the prices of agricultural imports. Question, was the president's tariffs on steel and aluminum appropriate? Was it net good for the country?
I'll take that. First of all,
Patrick.
what people don't understand about the steel industry is that China controls 50% of the entire output of steel in the world. So they're in a position to literally manipulate prices whenever they want. Secondly, as far as the farmers are concerned, the Chinese are not stupid people. My family goes back to China in 1867, so I have a long relationship with China. And they were very smart. They figured out, okay, so what are the farm states where they can hurt that are Trump backers? They're playing politics in the same way as the Russians did, but with trade instead of using trolls and online thinking. So, but the whole point is the tariffs were an opening shot about renegotiating trade. The United States trade balance is $7.5 billion. Let me tell you about free trade. Free trade means free lunch in the United States. Since 1976, the last time we had a positive trade balance, it's been downhill all the way. The long-term international investment position of the United States is now over $7 trillion. That's 45% of the GDP of the United States, which is walking out the back door.
Well, let me
We do not have fair trade. And what Trump is doing is exactly what we should be doing. Here's the critical issue about trade. If you've got a trade deficit, you're losing. You're losing. The idea of coming up with a fair trade is a competition.
Well, Larry,
No.
to Patrick's point, $55 billion a month is our trade deficit. How would you solve that?
By the way, a couple of things. You said the trade deficit was what?
It's $55 billion a month.
I think it's a little less than that.
It's
I think
about
I don't
$750
think
billion.
So. But putting that aside, trade. Here's what a lot of people don't understand. Trade deficits are neither inherently good or inherently bad.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah, really. Yeah, really.
So we can run 40 to 50 billion dollar trade deficits per month ad infinitum, and
Well,
that's
we're
not
up to
inherently
what-
bad.
up to $8 trillion that are in the hole.
What did I just say, Dave? I said
You said they're not inherently
I
good or
said
bad.
they're not inherently good or bad. Remember that.
Anyway, you cut it. I think they're inherently. But
that's not
Marty's opinion.
Well, tell you what, if every day at school I took your lunch money, there would be a trade deficit between the house of Ditkoff and the house of Heiser.
The difference, Marty.
If it wouldn't matter, I would say I'll just keep taking your lunch
Well, here's the
money.
difference, Marty. That you take in trade, they'll take our money, we get their products and services. When if you were a bully and you just beat someone up for their lunch money, the person who's getting bullied gets nothing.
Do you ever
That's
run
the
out of
difference.
Trump might
That's the
say that
difference.
Trump might say that we're getting bullied in these
And we
trade
are.
deals.
And
That's what he's saying. Let me just give you an example.
Yeah.
Let me finish my sentence.
Go ahead.
When you take a Chevrolet and you want to sell it in Beijing, and they put a 25% tariff on it, and yet at the same time their products, manufactured products like that, although they don't really produce cars that much. But let's say that there was a car, and we put a 2% tariff on it. That's an imbalance. That's a bullying. That's China taking our lunch money every day, and that matters because it does build up over time.
Yeah, well, Marty, okay, but I'm saying is this the best way to respond? Imported
Okay,
steel,
tell you-
I'm not done yet. Imported steel is a relatively small component. I don't have the specific numbers of it in terms from China in terms of overall U.S. steel demand. Trump picked this particular issue to make his stand, and I'm saying this discussion from Ford, Precision Cast Parts, the farmers, and a lot of other people, it's led to his very easily done, or is that very easily won?
But what's your solution? I
Trade
hear kind of like a lot of noise here. What's your solution to a $50 billion a month trade deficit right now? Give me the solution. How are you going to solve that?
Dave,
don't obfuscate. Might not be good, might not be bad. We don't know.
Dave,
How you gonna solve
keep
it?
saying. All right, Dave.
How you gonna solve it?
Stop. You keep saying, as I said previously, and I really didn't get to flesh out my point, particularly well, that if you have countries that have, say, and I try not to go into all the details of the economics, but you have countries that are relatively poor. Their markets at home currently cannot provide or cannot purchase the goods that they manufacture. If we are purchasers, that leads to increased standards of living abroad.
How are you going to solve it in America? $50 billion a month deficit. How are you going to solve it?
Dave,
give me a solution.
I'm trying.
You're not.
No, I'm not saying. Dave, you keep saying
silliness around here.
No, I'm not.
Oh, this country here. How are you going to solve America's problem today?
Dave, you keep saying.
Don't drag third world countries into this. How is America going to solve the problem today?
I can tell you what not. Dave,
no, tell me what to do.
No, I'm telling you what to do.
No, you just said you're going to tell me what
No,
not
I'm
to
saying
do.
free. I'm saying freer trade is good. Is that ultimately we learned this from the Marshall Plan. We learned this from World War I. That when the rest of the country goes into depression, the rest of the world goes into depression, or the rest of the world is impoverished, that is not good for the United States.
So how is the United States going into deficit? Good for the United States.
We're talking about we're talking about trade deficit. We're not talking about.
Do we have
we're not talking about budget.
do we have a trade
We have
deficit with the EU? Yes, we do. Do we have a trade deficit with China? Yes, we do. Do we have a trade deficit with Mexico? Yes, we do. So how is this helping us?
Because we're getting goods and services more cheaply than if we just had, if we just
Obviously
bought
not. If you factor in the deficit, it's not cheaper. Deficits mean you're losing.
No. If you were, if it weren't cheaper, then it wouldn't happen.
Deficits mean you're losing.
So what's the solution?
Dave, what I'm saying to you, one thing you can do. I'll give you one thing. It's if you think there's dumping, you go to the World Trade Organization. That's what. Well, then what else do you do? Because if you
do
go
exactly
with this,
what President Trump did.
You try to get other countries to lower their tariffs.
Yeah.
You get a little leverage
well,
in
you know what?
negotiate.
Okay, let's get some auto worker who's just been tossed
Tariffs
out of
are
his
part of
job,
the-
and maybe you can tell
You
him
didn't care about the
outrageous.
coal miners in West Virginia?
Dave, I'm the only one on the show who ever care about it.
Well, the Democrat, your party
because
did.
they have.
Well, let's
Hillary
get
wanted to
back
put
to
the West
trade.
Virginia coal miners out of
Dave,
business.
Let's get back to trade.
Yeah, well, we get back to. I just want to say Trump has a solution for
Do you
1820.
Do you think it's best in our interest to actually continue to run trade deficits infinitum?
I think it's beneficial to have freer trade.
Freer trade? No,
more
we've got free
GOP.
trade already. We don't have fair trade.
Well, it's funny. If the president thought it was
What's the
so
matter
bad,
with fair trade?
why does he want to get back into the TPP? If he thinks all these trade deals.
I don't know
are
why
done?
he's going to do
If
it.
it's revised and
It's
made
the
fair.
terrible idea.
That's what he
No.
said. If
The
it's made fair,
TPP
they'll
was
get back
the
in.
worst deal ever written.
Worse. Well, we are. I understand
It's a
where
tough spot you're in,
We
aren't
have
you?
about 30. No, I think
You
I'm
like
making
it.
a point. The president
but your
says these
point
trade
is
deals-
wrong.
No, my point is not wrong. My point is right. Be that as it may, we'll have to continue this some other time. We have 30 seconds left. Again,
Give
my
Marty
thanks.
the whole time. He's been
I
very
thank you
patient.
to
He's
Marty.
been eating this up.
I thank Marty for letting me host. Dave, always a pleasure. Patrick, good to meet you. I like your singing voice. And we'll do it again. And next week.
Patrick could take us out with a little opera, just a smidge.
Let him.
And we thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. And again, thanks to Marty.